So what exactly is a loop? Loop is nothing but any entity that repeats your a set of statements again and again. That's what called loop. Now, Java has multiple loops. In fact, Java has three different types of loops, and even for loop has multiple varieties anyway. So, like I said, loop is nothing but you actually use the looping statements to repeat a set of statement. And why we need it? If we don't do it, we'll end up writing multiple. We'll end up writing the same statement again and again and again. So loops actually help us to make the program optimized much better than what we have earlier. So you have three types of loops: for loop, while, and do while. So what is the difference like between these and where should we use it? So if you see, a for loop is generally used when you know that this many times the loop has to run. That means you should know how many times the loop is going to continue. In fact, I could say as a short form, finite number of times. If you know loop has to run 10 times, 15 times, 16 times, you can go for loop. Okay, that means in this case, you should know how many number of iterations or loops are going to happen. Whereas in the case of while loop, this guy also able to help you to run the code when you know the number of iterations or loops. At the same time, he has one more ability to loop when you don't know how many iterations also there. That means infinite loops. Let's say you want to run the loop, but you don't know how many times to run. So you might be thinking, what kind of use case is this? A simple use case could be your operating system, which runs in your system, is an infinite loop program. You can see that until you shut down, it keeps running it. That's an infinite loop program. And there are certain use cases where people write infinite loop programs, like your 24/7 systems, whatever you're seeing, those are all infinite loop programs. Until something is down, they will keep running it. So all those use cases, the while loop fits perfectly well. The only difference between for loop and while loop is while loop can work even for situations where you want to do infinite loop. Besides, it also helps you to write finite loops. Both are possible. Whereas for loop is only possible when you want to write finite loops. But in Java, for loop also you can make infinite loops. That is also possible. But the recommendation is to use for loop only for finite number of times. While loop, finite as well as infinite. Do while also same. Just that one difference in do while is, in do while you can write finite and infinite, and the same time you can write do while so that at least one time the statements inside that do while gets executed. That is possible because the way do while structure is that the condition checking will not happen at the beginning of or before entering the loop. The condition checking happens after one statement execution happen. That's why it actually ensures that at least one time the set of statements you write will happen. Now this is how the structure looks like for the for loop. There is an initialization part, there is a condition, and there is your step value. Either you want to increment or decrement. Whereas in the case of while loop, you have to write a condition what you want to do. Before that, you want to initialize whatever you have to write before it. And inside this while, you have to write the increment or decrement kind of. Do also, if you want to write initialization, you have to write before. All the terminating conditions you have to write here, and step or decrement value you will write inside the code.